Are we live? Shh. All right, Marty, we live? Okay, good. All right. Welcome to the Tuesday night Torah study. Sorry we are a few minutes late. We have been working on the idea of light and darkness, and in this case, the light is not like what we've been talking about in the teaching. It's the light of the candles, but it's also, I'm realizing after eating all of those donuts and potato latkes that light is not something I'm going to be. So we might have to be doing, instead of a study on light and darkness, it'll be a study on heavy and light and heavy. Which actually is another study tool that the Jewish community uses when they're looking at Torah, is seeing a comparison between light and heavy, as in weightier matters versus lighter matters, but there's nothing light about eating all those donuts. And that chocolate babka, oh, that was so good. I shouldn't have said that. Maybe that way there'll be some left over for me later, because that was good. All right, we got sound. Everything's good on that side? All right? All right, so welcome to the Tuesday night Torah study. We're going to get started here in just a second. I know we're kind of adjusting to the food we had and everything up here. We're going to go through our Torah portion reading. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and start off with some prayer time real quickly. We're going to read the Torah portion. We'll get some announcements in there probably as well. And then we'll get some, maybe a re-go through of the announcements, and then we'll discuss the Torah portion we read. This week's Torah portion is Miketz. Okay, so people are paying attention to the order of the studies. We're going to be in Genesis chapters 41 through a good chunk of 44. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with prayer time. So if you have a prayer need or a prayer request or a praise report, you can raise your hand here. Steve's going to go ahead and grab the other mic. If you're online, I've got Rob and Manny over there on the desk. Okay, we're excited to have Rob here for the week for a couple of days. That's good. We usually get him only here on Saturdays, so it's good to have you here midweek. We just got to move you closer so you could be here all the time. Yeah. Excuse me. First prayer request is pray for this coughing thing that I've got. It confuses everybody when I go to restaurants and stores. They're all thinking I'm going to get everybody contagious. When it's a mechanical thing, it's not a contagion thing, but it is hard for me, though, with all that violent coughing. All right, but otherwise I feel just fine in case anybody's wondering, but I do appreciate your prayers for the coughing. Okay, who's first? Okay, Sarah Beth.
I just wanted to give a praise report. I know I'd asked for a prayer about my job and the changes that will be coming, and thankfully I got what I wanted. Whether that was his will or not, I don't know, but both jobs are coming open at the same time, so I get to apply for both equally.
Amen. Okay, that'll work out. Okay, who's next? Okay, if nobody else, go ahead and bring it to the live stream. Okay, live stream.
Okay, from Robert Hogg, pray for me for my strength and peace and for good health for my mom. Evangeline Agalasso, prayers for strength and wisdom to go through this time's testing from everyone around me, especially families, some unspoken work related. Aaron Murray prays, thank Abba for sending me to a new team of doctors that is looking really promising.
Okay.
Arthur and Linda, continue prayer for Linda, just not well, digestive issues and high blood pressure. From Shirley Akpalu, unspoken health prayers. Myrtle Walker, pray for my granddaughter and her family. Grandmother passed away this morning. Alice Corey, prayers for health issues. Carolyn Giles, prayer for my grandson who fell and broke his nose the other day. Pray for Rabbi Steve's cough. Michelle Perez, prayers for Rabbi Steve's cough. Also have a mechanical cough every time weather changes, COPD, sleep apnea, and lung issues. No name on this one. Please pray for physical and financial needs for both my wife and I. Keith Goodson, prayers for strength. Just my 7th month trying to be Torah observant. We have many unspoken and travel, and then prayers for, well, just for this time of the year. So that's all I have right now.
Amen. Amen. Okay. And just for the person who did mention the apnea, COPD, and all that stuff, don't have either of those two problems anymore. Never had the COPD, but I did have the apnea problem. But I've got that under control with the BiPAP I have. But the cough, they tell me, is because I think it's what happens is in the fall, I get a nasal drip or something with the allergies. And a little of it gets into the lining of the lungs. And of course, it doesn't want to just come out of the lining so easily. So the coughing is an effort to do something that is not going to be effective because it's not going to come out that way. But hopefully, eventually, it just dries up and works its way and does what it has to do. All right. That being said, we do want to pray for all those that have asked for prayer since the last time we got together. I have a praise. I do want to appreciate that Rabbi Tom did a fantastic job last week. I appreciate having you to turn to when I'm not going to be around so that you can stand in and do that kind of a job. So appreciate that. All right. Let me think of what else, if there's anything else to add to the prayers. Okay, we'll do this as kind of part of the prayer time. I know that this is a tough time for a lot of people. The good news is that after tomorrow, it's over. Doesn't mean anybody's going to take their lights down or anything, but at least, you know, it gets finished with for a little bit, and you know, people will start focusing on wishing you a Happy New Year instead and focus on that. So just let me throw this out there because it does come up quite a bit on Torah study type things. This is a big question. So generally speaking, our main thing is this. We must remember, I guess I'll try to face the cameras here. We have to remember that for the most part, the people that we're friends with, our family members, etc., they don't actually have any idea what they're doing. In other words, like, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they knew what they were doing. They were killing issue, or whatever, but they didn't understand what they were doing. They didn't really know and understand what they were doing. And most of the people out there that are doing Christmas, tonight and tomorrow, they don't know really what's going on. They don't understand about the feast. They only know what they know. And it takes a divine intervention. It takes a Yahweh intervening moment to open eyes, open ears, and open hearts to receive these kind of things. So be very patient with your family and friends when they are going through what they go through. You do not need, this is important, you do what you want. I'm just going to tell you from me. You do not need to straighten everybody out that goes to and get you involved in any way by, if they want to wish you Merry Christmas or something, you don't have to say, well, I don't do Christmas. Okay, look, they probably don't even care about Christmas either. It's just what everybody says this time of year, okay? And so I just politely smile, because, a lot of times it's the cashier at the store or some other thing, and you happen to be at the restaurant or somebody just says, by the way, Merry Christmas, whatever. I generally, you're not going to be mad at me, I just say thank you. Not because I care that it's Christmas, or they don't care that it's Christmas either. They're just trying to be polite. Okay? I don't wish them one back and say, and you too, or anything. But if people say things, I know I'm understanding their intent. They're just trying to be polite under the circumstances. All right? And look, you may have some friends and family members and co-workers that'll wish you a happy Hanukkah when they figure out that you're keeping Hanukkah. They don't care about Hanukkah. They're trying to be polite. Okay? They don't understand that there's a difference between the things. So, no, I'm not going to participate, but I'm not going to be rude either. I don't have to be caustic and harsh and rude, okay? And so, they're not even paying attention to you anyway. They're already on to the next customer. So you can just politely say, thank you, and move on. Because you're appreciating that they're just trying to be friendly and polite. And that's all that it really is. They don't know you well enough to really wish you a merry anything. I mean, think about it. I mean, do they really know you well enough to wish you anything? They don't care about you. They're not going to remember you the minute you walk out the store. I mean, why would they? You're one of 400,000 customers they're going to see this week. Okay? But that's not the point. But let's try to not be caustic. Let's try not to be all over Facebook, getting in everybody's faces and that kind of thing, okay? Just please keep that in mind. Because this is a hard time of the year. And the other thing is, if you are coming into this brand new and you are trying to understand Hanukkah, Hanukkah is not a Torah commanded event. So you don't have to do it. But it's also not a commandment against it. So it's nothing that you're breaking by doing it. We've had some people leave here over the Hanukkah thing, and I get that. People can leave over anything, and that's fine. I'm just make sure we understand. But also, we're not to turn it into, Messianic Torah observant Christmas by turning it into giving presents like some of the Jews had started to do back in the 1960s here in the States. I mean, that's where the Jewish giving out a present every night came from. That was not the original tradition. By the way, Christmas didn't have presents connected to it for a very long time. Okay, that came way, 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 way later. So, I mean, these are all things that by tradition get incorporated in various ways, both in the Jewish community and in the Christian community. And they're both wrong in many of those cases. But we do know that what happened was they cleaned out the temple to prepare it for function and for Sukkot after they were able to get the Greeks out of it during the time of the Maccabees, okay? About 200 years, give or take, 30 years, whatever it was, before Yeshua, all right? And so this was something that was very important that we understand that they were trying to rededicate. That's why Hanukkah is the Feast of Dedication, okay, a rededicating of the temple. So is that appropriate if we know that we are the temple? I've got a couple of teachings you could listen to out there that are online. You've got the story of Hanukkah. You've got a time to rededicate yourself. And you've got Yeshua, the light of the world, which kind of deals with the light part. It's not so much a Hanukkah teaching, but it talks about light, from the point of view of Yeshua being the light. And we should be understanding that we are the temple of the living Elohim. We are the temple of the Ruach, and so therefore we should be dedicating and rededicating and cleaning that house out on a regular basis. So it's a good lesson to focus on at least once a year. And, we often do that as well right before Passover, the examining ourselves and that kind of a thing. So let's just keep that in mind as you transfer your thoughts this time of year and you come into this let's just go do Hanukkah, but we'll do it the same as we did Christmas. No, don't do that. Okay? It's a very serious celebration of the excitement and joy for cleansing out the temple to be used. Okay, it's not a time to focus on each other. It's a very vertically focused time. Cleansing out the temple because of our relationship with our Creator. All right? And so doing that and acknowledging Him for the 8 days is a wonderful thing to do. Now, the Sukkot connection is that they finally got it done. It was too late for Sukkot. And so they couldn't get it done in time to do Sukkot. And so you cannot move holy days around and just do Sukkot late. So they felt like, let's do a little festival to honor the rededication of the temple. We'll keep it for the same 8 days or the 7 days of Sukkot and Shemini Atzeret that we would have done Sukkot. And they did. And people talk about, what about the miracle of the oil burning for 8 days? And there's really no reference to that. Historically, we've got lots of references to the fact that people have talked about the story, but there's no actual historian, Josephus or any of those guys who ever wrote down this event actually happened. Talmud doesn't. None of the other esoteric writings of Judaism talk about it. It's just a tradition passed down that the oil lasted for 8 days. That's not why we have 8 days of Hanukkah. We have 8 days of Hanukkah because there were 7 days of Sukkot plus 1 extra day for Shemini Atzeret. That's why you have 8 days of Hanukkah. Okay? In case anybody ever really wanted to know. And then the next year, of course, they could do Sukkot correctly, but they enjoyed their festival of the rededicating of the temple so much they decided to continue a tradition of keeping that festival. Okay? We see Yeshua mentioned being on Solomon's porch during the Feast of Dedication in the book of John. So we do actually see a reference to Yeshua. Now, it doesn't say he was doing anything or keeping anything, but the day is mentioned, and it's not mentioned in a negative way, but it at least is referenced in the New Testament, which is funny because, there's a lot of Torah that isn't mentioned, and so people say, well, we don't have to do these things because Yeshua doesn't mention them. Well, Hanukkah was mentioned, if they understood that that's what it means when they read in the English, the Feast of Dedication. Okay, so that's what they were doing. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there because this time of year, we should be prayerfully considering our rededicating of ourselves. And we have lots of opportunities to do that. We do that every Rosh Chodesh. We could do it every Shabbat, certainly before every feast. On a daily basis, we should be thinking about our rededicating ourselves to Him and refocusing our hearts and our minds towards Him. So this is a good opportunity for that. So we will prayerfully do that. But I really want to make sure that we are not looking like the cultish, obnoxious group that a lot of people will paint us out to be because of the way we treat those of Christianity or the way we treat those of Judaism, just the way we treat other people in general. Okay? And generally speaking, this is on social media more than anywhere else, where we tend to get all excited about what we think is so funny, but really it's mocking people. Okay, these little memes, these little pictures that people put out there that seem to say, well, how stupid people are to do these things. Well, you know what? Almost every one of you was them. So either you're going to admit that you didn't know better and it took Him opening your eyes and that therefore it's the same for everybody, or you got to walk around feeling like you're just as stupid as you think they are. Okay? And if you think that you were just as stupid as you think they are, well, that's even more reason not to mock them because that's incredible hypocrisy then, isn't it? If you were just as dumb, but it has nothing to do with dumb. This is what they were raised into like you, and they can't see anything else. And until He opens their eyes, that's where they're going to stay. Okay? Same was true for you. So rather be praiseful as part of the prayer and praise time, be praising Him that He chose to open your eyes when He did. Okay? Appreciate that, but don't pick on everybody else. I've been accused over the years of having a horrible disdain for Christians and attacking Christians. I've never done any such thing. I have a real problem with the system that they're trapped in, the system that's lying to them. Okay? But I'm not going to go and attack it on social media, and I'm not going to try to, because then people think that they take it personally because I'm a Christian, so you must be attacking me. No, if you're a Christian, I'm attacking the system that has you in there. So I'll do it in a teaching, because the teaching that has a connotation to it and the context to it, so people know why I'm saying what I'm saying, instead of just trying to put it in a little meme, which doesn't really communicate anything, really. Except we all get a good chuckle at somebody else's expense. And we don't need to be doing that. Let's try to show that we're becoming more Yeshua-like. That means that we should be elevating ourselves. Not above other people, but holding ourselves to a higher standard. Okay, and the higher the standard, the higher the level of servants should be our mentality. And thinking, how can I help these people? Well, you can't help them see better or hear better or have a different heart, but you can help them see Yeshua in you better. Right? You can help them to see what it looks like to be a Torah observant Israelite in the context of the fruit of the Spirit. What are they seeing when they look at you? Oh, I see a guy who used to be one of us and now he's an obnoxious jerk, or she's an obnoxious jerk because of this new thing they're doing. Be firm. In other words, uncompromising, but be gentle. No, we can't have a Christmas tree in our house anymore. I'm sorry that hurts you, but this is going to be our new choice. Because a lot of mixed marriages with the spouse is not on the same page. By mixed, I mean Torah observant and non-Torah observant. That's a tough deal, okay? These end-of-year things, let me answer some questions before they pop up. I know we're taking a little bit of time away from the reading, but this is important. So at the end of the year here, you will likely get, some of you, end-of-year bonuses. Your boss may call it a Christmas bonus. Who cares what he calls it? What is it really? He's trying to make you feel good about working for his company or her company so that you'll want to stay there. It's a bonus for good work all year. Yes, you can take the bonus. Oh, but they wrote Christmas bonus on it. So what? That's not the point. You're not participating in Christmas because you took the bonus, okay? If he had no religious, by the way, almost everybody who keeps Christmas, most of them have no religious anything anyway, a lot of them, right? They're just something that they do. And so do you think there's any religious part of that for him? No, it's an employee-employer benefit program. I'm going to give you a year-end bonus. Whatever he calls it, who cares? Yes, you can take the bonus. If they're having an end-of-year party, yes, you can go to end-of-year party. If they're calling it a Christmas party, I wouldn't go to a Christmas party because I'm calling it a Christmas party. Now it's celebrating it and focusing it as being a Christmas party. Okay? So I wouldn't do that. Just like if you haven't already made the decision, you're watching right now, I wouldn't go to a Christmas dinner at your parents' house or anything that's focused on Christmas. That's the focus. Okay? And so don't participate in those things. But do it nicely. Don't do it like, what's wrong with you, you pagan idiot? Don't you know that this is about blah, 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 blah? Don't do that. You didn't know either. And by the way, saying that to them, is that going to change their mind about anything? Absolutely not. And a lot of you know that because you've already tried. It doesn't work. I've never met anybody that turned anybody from that to this by being blasted, for doing what they were doing before and mocked. It just never works that way, ever. So let's not do that, okay? Just want to make sure we threw that out there because, these are kind of questions that we do get because at the end of the year, all these things come up, okay? Now, as far as New Year's is a little bit different, all right? We can look and find pagan reasons why January 1st was picked for the beginning of our year, okay? There are definitely pagan reasons why January 1st was picked. However, the entire world uses this calendar, and we count years with this calendar. And so for all of us, the year will change on January 1st to 2020. So if somebody wishes you a happy new year, they're not wishing you a happy celebration of the new year. They're wishing you well in 2020. Can we agree? And so there's nothing wrong with you saying thank you. I hope you have a good 2020 also. Okay, nobody's celebrating on that day any pagan rituals or anything else. We're simply acknowledging a lot of people look forward to it because they use it mentally and emotionally as a way to get a clean start on a fresh start. It's a new year. I'm going to rededicate myself, like Hanukkah can be, right, to better health, better wealth, better jobs, better something, more effort, more conscientiousness, treating people, but whatever it is, you make these resolutions. The point is, you're looking at it as we do every Rosh Chodesh, right? It's a new month. It's a new time to look forward to new things. So don't get all hung up on, well, the calendar doesn't start in January. Well, the one you live with does. Okay? That's the one when you cannot force the rest of the world to start. Do you stop now, like some people do, calling today Tuesday? Oh, tomorrow's, not Wednesday, but it's Woden's Day, or Friday's Freya's Day, or Saturday's Saturn's Day. Well, that was probably the case, absolutely, at some point in the beginning. Now it's just our way of knowing what day of the week and chronologically where you are at. Here, I'll give you proof that it doesn't matter. Okay, what month is this right now? December. What does D stand for numerically? 10. What month is this in the calendar? 12. See? Nobody cares what the words mean. October is 8. No, it's the 10th month. November is 9. No, it's the 11th month. September is 7. No, it's the 9th month. How'd they get that all messed up? Because Julius Augustus was honored by putting July and August right in the middle of everything. These months used to be actually 8, 9, and 7, 8, 9, 10 by number. So do we really want to get hung up that the names mean anything? No, it just helps us know where we are in time. Okay? Look, the bottom line is worship, submission. Okay, there's people that will talk about the verse that says, these names are never to come out of your mouth. I don't know, when I read the scriptures, I may read Dagon or Chemosh or some other pagan god. Oh, I just broke a command. No, he's saying in the context of honoring and worship. Okay, so are you honoring and worshiping anything by acknowledging that today is Tuesday in the month of December? No. You're just acknowledging where we are in time, in the world that we live in. That's how we count time. Okay? Just hopefully we can get to the place where we're not jumping at shadows and freaking out about everything and being serious about the right things. Okay? The important things. And also remember that we are not of the world, but we still have to live in it. All right? And the world is not going to start calling the days according to, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, they're not going to start calling it with the Hebrew names. If you want those names for days, well, go to Israel, and maybe some people will do it. But otherwise, no. Okay? The rest of the world is not going to do it. Okay? All right, so that being said, we're going to go ahead and have somebody open us in prayer. Okay, Charles, you want to do it? Steve seems to be throwing the mic at you.
Sure. Abba, we just thank you for this time of this year that we can celebrate Hanukkah and come together and just fellowship and start over. And Lord, we just ask, Lord, that you just will bless the reading tonight as we read your law and your Torah, Father, that we will take this word and apply it to our lives. And I just ask that you will just bless the rest of this service, and we just thank you for all you do. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, one last thing before we get started while people are coming up. I've got 10 readings tonight, so while you're coming up, I'll say a few things real quickly. We've got, we've got 6 chairs up there, so we've got to fill them up a little more than once, like 1.5 times, plus Rabbi Tom, so that'll be 10. So here's the thing. People have asked, well, how come you don't do the Haftarah portion and the Brit Kadashah portion? Well, look, the Haftarah portion, if you understand it, was simply something that was used when they didn't have access to the first 5 books to give them a way to memory trigger the Torah portion cycle. So the sages went and looked for something in the prophets, because you've got to remember, this stuff was on individual scrolls. And so if somebody had a scroll of one of the prophets, they could look for something that was connected to, for example, this week's Torah portion of Miketz, and say, oh, there's a part in one of the prophets that kind of reminds us of what happened in Miketz, and we can use that as a memory trigger. That's all it was. It wasn't a separate study. It was a memory trigger to bring you back to the foundation, which is the Chumash, the first 5 books. All right? And then the Brit Hadashah portion, well, people say, well, now we got a New Testament, we got to do a portion for that too. It would be the same thing, looking for something that somehow relates to the Torah portion that's also being said in the New Testament. And it's not always easy to find something for every Torah portion that connects up in any direct way. Okay? So as far as doing separate studies for these things, it's actually more useful to do like we do with the Chumash, which would be to go through the entire book of Isaiah or Ezekiel or Jeremiah as separate studies, as opposed to taking one chapter or half a chapter as the Haftarah portion. Okay, and so because a lot of times the Haftarah is just a small piece. It's not even a complete section, because they're trying to find that one small piece that sort of connects to the theme that's in the Torah portion. And same thing with Brit Hadashah. It's more useful if we would go through, and we have done, we went through almost the entire book of Romans and almost the entire book of Hebrews, the other studies that we were doing recently. At Passover and unleavened bread, we go through at least one of the Gospels completely. All right, we've done that over the years. And so I think that this is something just to keep remembering, because I know a lot of people say, well, how come we don't do all that? Well, first of all, if we did all of it, the Haftarah and the Brit Hadashah with the Torah portion, we'd be here all night. Which is okay, but not everybody could be here all night. You have, children that have to be put to bed. We've got jobs to get to in the morning and things like that. So we'd be here after midnight. So I just wanted to make sure that it at least gets covered, that why we are doing what we do. It's interesting, in the second Karate Kid movie, a lot of you people watch these movies, whatever, he's in Okinawa and he goes to the original dojo, the original school, and on the wall it says, rule number 1, karate is for self-defense only. Rule number 2, go back to rule number 1. This is all about rule number 2, the foundation. He says, go back to rule number 1. That's your foundation. Why do we keep doing the first 5 books over and over again? Because if you know them, like you know your back of your hand, like you know yourself, you know it like breathing, if you know it that well, you'll know what's going on in the prophets. You'll know what's going on in the Brit Chadashah. Because you'll have that foundation to know what's going on. And so, and I don't know about you, but I've been doing this probably longer than almost any of you, and every time I go through it, something comes to my mind that I didn't maybe see exactly the way I see it right this moment, a revelation, an insight, something. So don't say, I'm bored, I've gone through this so many times. Well, that's why you don't see anything, because you're looking at it with the wrong excitement. You should be, not the wrong excitement, the wrong anticipation. You should be anticipating with excitement. What is he going to show me this time? What little nugget? And by the way, you should only need to find one. If you find one little insight that makes a difference in your life, reading these almost 4 chapters, 4 and change, what more would you need? You need more than one little insight each time? I buy books, often on life prep and all this kind of personal development, life coaching stuff. If I learn one little thing out of the book, I mean, I've studied so much, I probably know everything that's in most of these books already, but if there's one little tool or technique or idea, that's all I'm looking for, then the whole $12 I spent on the book is worth it. So what more do you need? Just look for that one thing. Because somebody will be thinking, well, I didn't get much out of that. Well, did you get anything? If you got anything, it was worth it. Amen? Amen. Okay, so for those of you that are new online, please be respectful of Rob and Manny, and I believe Kurt's on there as well. Just be respectful. No, not tonight. All right, but just be respectful of the leadership in the room, okay, on the live stream. Okay, so I'm going to call each person up one at a time. I will read a blessing over each one of you. It's a tradition to do so, and then I'll tell you what verses you are reading. All right, so why don't we start off with you, Rabbi Tom, if you want to kind of come up here, we'll start off with you. That's good. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rabbi Tom, you're going to take us in chapter 41 and beginning in verse 1 to verse 14.
Thank you. And it came to be at the end of 2 years' time that Pharaoh had a dream and saw him standing by the river and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, looking beautiful looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. Then saw 7 other cows coming up after them out of the river, ugly and lean of flesh, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and lean of flesh cows ate up the 7 beautiful-looking and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and dreamed a second time, and saw 7 heads of grain coming up on one stalk, plump and good, and saw 7 lean heads scorched by an east wind coming up after them. And the 7 lean heads swallowed the 7 plump and complete heads. Then Pharaoh awoke and saw it was a dream. And it came to be in the morning that his spirit was moved, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Mizraim and all his wise men. And Pharaoh related to them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my crimes this day, when Pharaoh was wroth with his servants and put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. Each one of us dreamed a dream in one night, he and I. Each one of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. And there was with us a Hebrew youth, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we related to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came to be as he interpreted for us, so it came to be. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon, and he shaved and changed his garments and came to Pharaoh.
Amen, amen. Okay, thank you, Rabbi Tom. Okay. Next up, we have Wayne. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Wayne, who's come upon to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 15 to 32.
And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. Now I myself have heard it said of you that you understand a dream to interpret. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. Let Elohim answer Pharaoh with peace. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river, and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, beautiful looking and fat. And they fed amongst the reeds. Then saw 7 other cows coming up after them, poor and very ugly and lean of flesh, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Mizraim. And the lean of flesh and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. Yet when they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had been eaten them, for they were as ugly as the beginning. Then I awoke. Also, I looked in my dream and saw 7 heads coming up on one stalk, coming complete and good. Then saw 7 heads withered, lean, scorched by the east wind, coming up after them. And the lean heads swallowed the 7 good heads, and I spoke to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 lean and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty heads scorched by the east wind are 7 years of scarcity of food. This is the word which I spoke to Pharaoh. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. See, 7 years of great plenty are coming in all the land of Mizraim. But after the 7 years of scarcity of food shall rise, and all the plenty be forgotten in the land of Mizraim. And the scarcity of food shall destroy the land, and the plenty shall not be remembered in the land, because of the scarcity of food following, for it is very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the word is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hastened to do it.
Amen. All right, thank you, Wayne. Hi, Serenity. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Serenity, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 33 to 45. Okay.
And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Mitzrayim. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land to take up 1/5 of the land of Mitzrayim in the 7 years of plenty, and let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And the food shall be for a store for the land for the 7 years of scarcity of food which shall be in the land of Mitzrayim. And do not let the land be cut off by scarcity of food. And the word was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Could we find another like him, a man in whom is the spirit of Elohim? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Be over my house, and you yourself at your mouth. All my people shall kiss only in the throne. I am greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh took his seal ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he dressed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried out before him, bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without a word from you, let no man lift his hand or foot in all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zophnath-Paneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Mitzrayim.
All right, good job. All right, Tamara. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may bless Tamara has come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessings and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. All right. What? Verse 46 to the end of the chapter.
Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout the land of Mitzrayim. And in the 7 years of plenty, the ground brought forth generously. And he gathered all the food from the 7 years which were in the land of Mitzrayim, and laid up the food in the cities. He had laid up every city the food of the fields which surround them. Thus Joseph gathered very much grain, as the sand of the sea, until he ceased counting, for it was without number. And Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of scarcity of food came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. And Joseph called the firstborn Manasseh, and Elohim has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for Elohim caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Mitzrayim came to an end, and the 7 years of scarcity of food began to come, as Joseph had said. And the scarcity of food was in all the land, but in the land of Mitzrayim there was bread. But when all the land of Mitzrayim hungered, and the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread, Pharaoh said to all the Mitzrites, go to Joseph, who do whatever he says to do, or to you. And the scarcity of food was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Mitzrites. And the scarcity of food was severe in the land of Mitzrayim. And all the earth came to Joseph in Mitzrayim to buy grain, because the scarcity of food was severe in all the earth.
Amen. All right, nothing like having a daughter than a mother to team up here. That was nice. Okay, now Charles. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may bless Charles has come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, now you're going to take us into chapter 42, reading verses 1 through 13.
And when Jacob saw there was grain in Mitzrayim, Jacob said to his sons, why do you look at each other? And he said, see, I have heard that there is grain in Mitzrayim. Go down to the place and buy for us there, and let us live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Mitzrayim. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some harm come to him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the scarcity of food was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down there before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke to them harshly. and said to them, Where do you come from? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dream which he had dreamed about them, and said to them, You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said to him, No, my master, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all of one man's sons. We are trustworthy. Your servants are not spies. But he said to them, No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said, Your servants are 12 brothers, and the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And see, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Charles. Okay, Amy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Amy, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Amy, you're going to take us now from verse 14 to 26.
And Joseph said to them, It is as I spoke to you, saying, You are spies. By this you shall be proven. By the life of Pharaoh, you do not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you are kept in prison. So let your words be proven to see whether there is any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh you are spies. And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Now Joseph said to them the third day, Do this and live, for I fear Elohim. If you are trustworthy, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, and you go bring grain for the scarcity of food of your houses. And bring your youngest brother to me, and let your words be confirmed, and you do not die. And so they did. And they said to each other, Truly, we are guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the distress of his life when he pleaded with us, yet we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Did I not speak to you, saying, Do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen? And see, his blood is now required of us. And they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. And he turned himself away from them and wept. But he came back to them and spoke to them, and he took Shimon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph commanded, and they filled their sacks with grain, also to put back every man's silver to his sack, and to give them food for the journey, and thus it was done for them. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and went from there.
Amen. Thank you, Amy. Okay, next up, Shira. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shira, who's come upon Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Shira is now going to take us from verse 27 to the end of chapter 42.
And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his silver, for there it was in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, My silver has been returned, and there it is in my sack. And their hearts sank, and they were afraid, saying to each other, What is this that Elohim has done to us? So they came to Yaakov their father in the land of Canaan, and reported to him all that befell them, saying, The man, the master of the land, spoke to us harshly, and took us for spies of the land. But we said to him, We are trustworthy, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is today with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the master of the land, said to us, By this I know that you are trustworthy. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food for the scarcity of food of your households, and go. And bring your youngest brother to me. Then I know that you are not spies, but that you are trustworthy. I give your brother to you, and you move about in the land. And it came to be, as they emptied their sacks, that look, the bundle of each man's silver was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of silver, They were afraid. And Yaakov, their father, said to him, "You have bereaved me. Yosef is no more, and Shimon is no more, and you would take Binyamin? All this is against me." So Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "Take the lives of my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I myself bring him back to you." But he said, "My son is not going down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any harm should come to him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to Sheol."
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Shira. I'm used to you being on the other side of that screen. Yep. All right, this is Olivia Halfman, everyone. All right, he who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Olivier, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Olivier, you're going to take us into chapter 43 and read verses 1 through 14.
Thank you. But the scarcity of food was severe in the land, and it came to be, when they had eaten up all the grain which they had brought from Mizraim, that their father said to them, "Go back, buy us a little food." But Yehudah spoke to him, saying, "The man vehemently warned us, saying, 'You do not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you let our brother go with us, we go down and buy you food. But if you do not let him go, we do not go down, because the man said to us, You do not see my face unless your brother is with you.' And Israel said, 'Why did you do evil to me to inform the man that you still had another brother?' And they said, 'The man kept asking about us and our relatives, saying, Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' And we informed him according to these words. How could we know that he would say, Bring your brother down?' And Yehudah said to Israel his father, 'Send the boy with me, and let us arise and go, and live and not die, both we and you and also our little ones. I myself shall stand guarantee for him. From my hand you are to require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not delayed, truly by now we could have returned this second time.' And their father Israel said to them, 'If so, then do this. Take some of the best fruit of the land in your vessels, and bring a present down for the man, a little balm and little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds. And take double silver in your hand, and take back in your hand the silver that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. It could have been a mistake. And take your brother and arise, go back to the man. And El Shaddai give to you compassion before the man, so that he shall release your other brother on Benjamin. And if I am bereaved, I am bereaved.'"
Amen. Okay, thank you, Olivier. And now, Janet. Yay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Janet, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Janet's going to take us now in chapter 43 from verse 15 to the end of the chapter.
Okay. Thank you. And the man took that present and Benjamin, and they took double the amount of silver in their hand, and arose and went down to Mitzrayim, and stood before Yosef. And Yosef saw Benjamin with them, and said to the one over his house, "Bring the man home, and make a great slaughter, and prepare, for these men are to eat with me at noon." And the man did as Joseph said, and the man brought the man into Joseph's house. And the men were afraid, because they were brought into Joseph's house. And they said, "It is because of the silver which was put back into our sacks the first time that we are brought in. to throw himself upon us and fall upon us, to take us as slaves, our donkeys too. So they came near to the man over the house of Joseph and spoke to him at the door of the house and said, "Oh, my master, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it came to be when we came to the lodging place that we opened our sacks and saw each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Our silver is in its weight, and we have brought it back in our hand. And we have brought down other silver in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put our silver in our sacks." But he said, "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your Elohim and the Elohim of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. Your silver had come to me," and he brought Shimon out to them. And the man brought the man into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet. And he gave their donkeys fodder. And they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they were to eat there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed down before him to the earth. And he asked them about their welfare and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" And they said, "Your servant, our father, is in good health. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads down and did obeisance. And he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" And he said, "Elohim show favor to you, my son." And Joseph hurried, for his emotions were deeply moved towards his brother. And he looked for a place to weep, and went into his room and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out and controlled himself and said, "Serve the food." And they set him a place by himself, and them by themselves. And the Mitzrites who ate with him by themselves, for the Mitzrites could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Mitzrites. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at each other in astonishment. And he took portions to them from before him, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they feasted and they drank with him.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Janet. All right, last up is Chloe. Come on up. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Chloe, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Chloe, you're going to read us in chapter 44, verses 1 to 17.
And he commanded the one over his house, saying, "Fill the man's sacks with food as they are able to bear, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and the silver for the grain." And he did according to the word of Joseph, which he spoke as soon as the morning was light. As the men were sent away, they and their donkeys, and when they had gone out of the city, not having gone far, Joseph said to the one over his house, "Rise up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is this not the one from which my master drinks, and with which he indeed divines? You have done evil in what you have done.' So he overtook them and spoke these words to them. And they said to him, 'Why does my master say these words? Far be it from us that your servants should do according to this word. See, we have brought to you from the land of Canaan, and the silver which
we found in the mouth of our sacks. How then should we steal silver or gold from your master's house? With whomever of your servants it is found, he shall die, and we shall become my master's slaves as well. And he said, now also let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found becomes my slave, and you are innocent. And they hurried, each man let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack, and he searched with the oldest first and the youngest last. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. And they tore their garments, and each man loaded his donkey and went back to the city. And Yehuda and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there. And they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said to them, what deed is this you have done? Did you not know that a man like me needs divines? And Yehuda said, what do we say to my master? What do we speak, or how do we clear ourselves? Elohim has found out the crookedness of your servants. See, we are also my master's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found. But he said, far be it from me to do this. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he becomes my slave, and you will go up in peace to your father.
Amen. Hey, give me a second here. All right, amen, amen. Thank you all the readers. Good job, everyone. It's always a joy to have some of the younger ones up there. By the way, just so we're clear, our policy on that really should be, parents must assure us that the children actually read well. Both of you read very well, so just excellent job, okay? But that you can read well. Now, of course, that doesn't go for adults. Whether you read well or not, you're welcome to come up. We've had a few of those. Okay, but not today. And of course, when the names are being read in the genealogies, nobody reads well, so it's okay. Don't feel bad about that. All right. Excuse me. The blessings after the Torah reading. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh your Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. All right. So some quick announcements here just to remind everyone of some of the things that are coming up. We do this every week. If anybody's new online, we do this every Tuesday. So you're welcome to join us, 8 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesdays. Apparently, if we offer some sort of delicious desserts like donuts and things, more of you will show up. Since the room has got obviously 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 times more people than normal, which is good. Because a lot of people are off work tomorrow. That's probably why it is. Okay, I understand. Before I forget, Sarah Beth is reminding me that we are going to have a dance class. How many of you would like to or would be available for a dance class on the 30th or 31st? The 31st preferably? Okay. On the 31st, no hands went up. Okay. Okay, tell you what, if you're interested in doing a dance class, please see Sarah Beth after we finish and let her know so we could set that up, because she is off a good chunk of the the next week or two before the new year, and so she was hoping to schedule some time to have a dance class if you are interested, because people have told her they would like to do that. Okay, for those of you also that are on the live stream, we do on Shabbat. Every Shabbat we have a live stream just like this on YouTube. Just look for it on our channel, MTOI channel there, and it starts at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Actually, we have music and things playing and some slides of announcements playing at 1 o'clock. Service starts at 1:15 Eastern time. Also, there was something else I was going to say with that. I don't remember, so it's okay. Excuse me. If you're online, if you could just hit the like button, that helps a lot, and subscribe. That also helps as well. It gets, obviously if you don't like it or don't approve, that's fine. Certainly you don't need to hit the don't like button, but if you like it and if you subscribe, it does help us show up on the side feed there for a lot of people looking for other things, and helps us to reach whoever Abba wants us to reach. Okay? And so that's out there. Look, he's going to reach whoever he wants to reach anyway, I get that, but he also gives us opportunities to participate. Okay, so you can, if you want to know how you can participate, some of you would like to do more, and you don't live here to do the things that are here, well, if you haven't subscribed, it's one more thing that you can do. You can subscribe. It does help. All right. How many people we got on there? 220. All right. When we used to do this with Adobe Connect, we were barely over 100. So that's over 200. Is that what you just said? Okay, see that? Strange how we would think alike. Okay, so like husband, like wife. All right, so I'm trying to think what other announcements. Okay, for those in the leadership, we have a leadership meeting on January, I think, the 19th. Okay, so that's coming up at the normal, usual times on Zoom. And, of course, Passover is coming, and so as Passover approaches, don't forget to get your paperwork in. On our MTOI website, you can go ahead and get that taken care of. We also have some forms still here on the back desk by the offering box if you want to grab a form, if you don't have a printer to print it out. Or you can also fill it out online. That's a new thing that we've been really experimenting with, so you should be able to fill out the paperwork online. Key word there is fill out your paperwork, like completely. And that'll keep you from bringing the rabbi monster alive to scold everybody. Okay, for not giving us a way to reach you and in case something's wrong. Look, if you fill out your paperwork and just show up and there was something wrong with your paperwork or something happened with your housing, you don't complain to us if it gets all messed up. You should really make sure that we could reach you in case there's anything that needs to be clarified or any kind of a hiccup happens in the works. Okay, I think that covers it for most of it. For those of you that will be participating in lunch tomorrow, you guys online, just hold on for a second. Okay, those of you that are participating in lunch tomorrow, did we say one? Around 1? Okay, now, because I don't know how many people are coming and because I don't know how crowded the place will be, you guys all should hopefully know where we're going. If you don't, you can see me afterwards. But you'll just have to show up, and hopefully we'll find tables together and group ourselves together as best we can. I do expect that the place will be crowded because there's not a lot of places open on Christmas, right? Because the world celebrates, so they close everything. So as a matter of fact, I got rushed out of a restaurant at just about 6 o'clock tonight, forgetting that they were going to close. I got there 5:30, went to order, and the guy said, I said, can I have half and half tea? And he said, we're out of tea, we just dumped it. I said, dumped it? He says, yeah, we're closing in half an hour. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot people closed because of this Christmas thing. Okay, so I didn't pay very much attention. But anyway, but the food still was good, we just didn't have what I wanted to drink. Anyway, so tomorrow, and then as far as the movie, that's all up to you guys to pick what you want, go see what you want, group together however you want, and we can try to organize it to some degree. I don't want the nightmare of trying to please everybody and try to coordinate this whole thing and get everybody together. That just logistically, there's too many of you to do that, okay? So we could all try to be as much of us together in one place as we can, but that effort has to be on your part to try to find out where people are going and then also show up and work that all out. All right, so that hopefully works that out. So tomorrow around 1, that should work out. All right, now, I think that's all the announcements, right? That's good. For those of you that are online also, I just want to promote that we have a program called Why MTOI Parsha Pearls. It is the weekly Torah portion for children of all ages. It's really geared from 5 to like 18, but it's really for children of all ages. It has about 60 or so pages each week of a PDF that you can print out that has in it a discussion of a section of the Torah portion, a section that will test whether or not you were paying attention to it, like fill in the blanks and other things like that. There's sometimes crossword puzzles, sometimes mazes, sometimes word searches. There are Hebrew words from each portion that you can learn and have their flashcards you can print out and cut up and hold on to. There's a craft, there's a snack related to the portion. So we think that all portions should be edible. And so you'll make something related, or at least something that's reminiscent or symbolic that's related somehow to the portion, so you can make something that you could also eat. And there are coloring pages for the children. It's just a lot of stuff. It's a really great package. And it's for wait, don't tell me now, don't purchase yet. There's more. No, it's all free. Okay? Hold on, wait, there's more. Now how much would you pay? Okay, it's free. Go to ymtoi.org, and it's all there for you to download for free. Okay? All right, just wanted to throw that out there. You can use it for your Sabbath school, and you can also use it for your homeschooling or your Torah study time with your children. Okay? And break it up through the week. We always post it as best we can on Sundays for the next week. So you have a whole week to have it. Look for it sometime later in the afternoon on Sunday by the time we get it posted, but sometime Sunday, and then you can have it. It's for the next week. So this week's Torah portion, Miketz, was posted on Sunday. All right, so you'd have it all week long. We do the Torah study Tuesday nights in advance of it being scheduled for Saturday, because a lot of groups do this stuff on Shabbat. All right. So that being said, what we're going to do now is have a discussion of the Torah portion. If you have a comment or question, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and Steve will bring around the mic. If you're online, Rob and Manny are over there manning the desk. Rob and Manny are manning. Okay, I'll work on that. Okay, Steve, go ahead. You can start us off.
All right. I got this out of the first few after reading, hearing the whole thing. And it caught my eye, and this is what it means for me. And it came to be. So things were going good until. So this is my comment regarding that. Some of us get twisted as we are in our challenge in a time and lose sight that it came to be. Right. And as it came to be, it shall pass as well. So we shouldn't get all twisted as things seem to be going downhill.
Amen. Okay, so that's actually one of I didn't have notes for this week that I could find. I mean, we moved offices and everything else, so I was taking fresh notes this week, and one of the things I wrote down was that we go through life, there are cycles of plenty and cycles of scarcity, and I want to talk about what made the difference in a second here, but just a reminder, as we go through the portion here, especially for those of you online, let's be respectful that this is a group Torah study. It's not a chance or an opportunity for you to grab the microphone or podium typing in and with your audience there and becoming the teacher or the preacher. There's one teacher in the room, that's me at the moment. Please respect the leaders that are online, Manny and Rob. And we are open for comments and questions. Let's try to focus on finding ourselves in the Torah portion and try to keep it chronologically. So you will see in your own lives cycles, okay? I didn't say psychos, but you'll find those too, okay? Find both, okay? But you'll find that there are cyclical things that happen in your life. You'll go through periods of time that seem pretty abundant and okay. Other times where it seems like nothing's going right. And then I think one of the lessons for us is to, first of all, recognize that these things are cyclical. Okay, time passes and things adjust. And there are lessons to be learned during both the abundant times and the scarcity times. But also, let's look at what made the difference. What made the difference in all of this? Like, for example, in Egypt, they had plenty of food, but everywhere else they didn't. So what made the difference? You can raise a hand if somebody wants to add it, or just, okay, I'll answer the question. Okay, I raised my hand. Okay, I call on me. Okay. Rabbi, I think that, okay, what they were dealing with here is they had foresight and planning. Okay? Now, sure, Pharaoh was given a dream because he had a need to have his attention grabbed to what was happening. Of course, if Pharaoh had been paying attention his whole life, depending how old the Pharaoh was, he would recognize that there were cycles. We've already read up to this point several times where Abraham and or Isaac would end up in Egypt because of the scarcity of food and having to go to a place that might have some more. I mean, this is not an unusual pattern. See, this is a challenge, by the way, for all of you with teenagers, with children, especially if they're sitting in the back talking to each other instead of listening to me. And the problem is when you have teenagers is that they're hearing about the scarcity that might be coming, or they're hearing about all, the doom and gloom stuff, and don't understand that these things are not unusual. Every generation has these things, these scares. Many of us are old enough to remember the absolute panic over in the 70s that we were going to run out of gas. You couldn't get gas. OPEC wasn't going to give us any gas, and we had to line up. Children, could you imagine having to stand in lines for hours? Your car could run out of gas waiting to get gas. Okay? We remember, I don't know about a lot of you remember this, but I mean, and meat prices went out through this, skyrocketed. We went to a time period when we had the droughts, and then back, you go far enough back, you have the Dust Bowl times. This is just in the United States. Every country has its cycles a little bit differently because of the weather patterns. We had the whole Y2K, the world was going to come to an end in the year 2000 because the computers were going to flip out and just shut off and never start again. Okay? Because of the coding that had been done with the computers. As Messianics and Hebrew roots and all of that, we've heard about the blood moons and heard about the next asteroid that's going to hit the planet and all. These things are not unusual. What you got to remember is Yahweh provides a way of escape. Yahweh has a plan if you don't panic. And so if you know the point is, if you know these things tend to happen, then you plan for them and you're going to be successful. See, it was knowing it was going to happen that made Egypt the place with the abundance, because they planned for it. They put aside. See, a lot of you don't have this, but some of you do have seasonal or cyclical jobs. Jobs, especially if you're outdoors in bad weather states, where if you're in construction, some other thing, where there's nothing to do between November, December, and like April. Work just dries up because you can't do it in the bad weather, whatever it is. And so you have to budget and plan for being laid off for a month or two or whatever the time is. Some of you work in some factories that are shut down because they're just going to shut down production during certain times of the year. But of course, you also know that other times it's all hands on deck. Everybody's working all shifts because they need to produce a lot. And so you take the overtime when you can, and you put it aside for the times that are lean. See, what the difference is that there's foresight and planning. Now, in this particular case, because Joseph is there and this was planned and Yahweh knew it, he utilized this situation to bring a provision to Israel, to Jacob and his children. By going through, look at the things that Joseph had to go through just to get him positioned in the right place for this. It's kind of like when Yeshua was there with that one blind man and they said, well, who sinned? Him? His parents? whose fault? He says, no, this was allowed to happen so that you can see the awesomeness of Elohim and the healing that was going to go on. So what did Joseph do that was so wrong? Nothing. But he needed to be where he needed to be for the intervention to be provided. All right? So don't always just judge a situation not knowing where it's going to lead to. Everything that happens is a part of a much bigger picture. And so if you're able to not be so micro-focused, but macro-focused a little bit, zoom out just a little bit and look at the patterns and look at where you are within the cycle of life and cycle of things, you might be recognizing some planning problems that you've been having. All right? The average person in this country cannot come up with enough money to fix a car or a major appliance or whatever without having to borrow. They can't come up with $1,000 without having to borrow, or in that range, a couple, high hundreds into the thousand, because we've not done the right planning with our money. You know, most of you will have something in terms of a sickness come on you and then recognize that you don't have what you need in the house. Even something as simple as Band-Aids. Many of us have gotten a cut and then realized you're out of Band-Aids. Well, why would you not have them? I'm guilty of all this stuff, by the way. I'm just saying we've done these things because we don't think about what is likely to happen. You're likely to cut yourself on something at some point or somebody else in the house. You probably should have a Band-Aid, something to, some sort of ointment to put on it, etc. You probably should have something for, an allergy, some sort of allergic reaction. There's just stuff you should have. The same thing with your finances. You should be putting money aside for that, adverse activity. A lot of people like to call it Murphy. See, you don't have your finances right, Murphy will he will go and take a bedroom out in your house. He will live in your living room. Okay, for those of you who don't know who Murphy is, Murphy wrote a law called the Murphy's Law that says whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Okay? But if you notice, it's kind of like if you bring your umbrella, it doesn't rain. But if you forget your umbrella, it rains. Okay? Now, if it rains anyway and you have the umbrella, you're good. So if your car breaks down or your dishwasher breaks or your washing machine or whatever it is that you need breaks, but you have the money on the side, okay, but then you can spend it and you got it all taken care of. But we don't plan for the fact that that could happen. If you know things are going a certain way at your job or that company looks like it might shut down at some point, you ought to be planning for that inevitability. This is what's made the difference. So don't just think of this as only Yahweh's intervention. He didn't intervene and give them anything. He told them what would happen. He got their attention to something they should have known anyway, that in abundant times you ought to put something aside, so during lean times you've got something. So realize Elohim did not just go and fix everything for everybody. He simply got their attention. And I think that's really, really important. By the way, in chapter 41 and verse 32, notice that he repeats it twice to establish that it's of Elohim. You've heard me say this many times. Don't build your theology on something that you see written one place, one time. Because either there's a problem with it or you just don't have enough context to know where it maybe matches up with something else. But if you can only find something in one place, one time, don't make that a major thing. Wait till you get more information to know what you do with it. There's so many people out there building huge parts of their theology and their belief systems out of a verse, probably out of context anyway, that they only appears in one place, one time. If Yahweh wants you to know it, he says it a lot. Not just twice. How many times did he tell you to guard the commands, observe, watch over, guard thousands? Which is why it's so hard to believe that now we get to the mainstream of Christianity today. That system is telling everybody, well, it wasn't as important as he said it 1,000 times. He just actually decided that was too much effort. We'll just do away with it. Because we're too incompetent to actually keep his stuff, So he just realized, I'll make it easier for them. We'll just wipe all that out. That's nonsense, okay? Now, I'm not picking on the people that are buying into that. I'm just saying the system is just putting together this terrible lie. Yahweh didn't say something for 4,000 years, thousands of times, just to say, okay, forget it. He doesn't make mistakes. He knows the end from the beginning. He knew the drought was coming and the abundant years were coming. He also knows how well we will do at keeping Torah or not. So I don't see how we could ever come up with the idea that somehow he made a mistake giving us the commands. And no, it wasn't a punishment. Is it a punishment to know that if people are keeping the commandments, that nobody's going to sleep with my wife? That no one's going to steal my stuff, that no one's going to murder anybody in my family. You know what I'm saying? Commandments actually are good. That people are going to pay me appropriately for honest day's work, honest day's pay. That they're going to use equal weights and equal measures. Aren't these good things? All of the different laws that deal with all of the interactions with him and with each other are blessings and helpful. They're not punishments. Doesn't make any sense at all. But of course, there are those out there that say that these are the laws that were against us. Doesn't it make life easier to kind of know the rules? Any of you either were or have a child that doesn't seem to know the rules and know how hard life is? And how hard it was for you? Children will go all over the place until you show them where the boundaries are. They need boundaries. Without boundaries, they will push out looking for boundaries. They're not doing it consciously, but they're just going to keep going in search of boundaries because deep down they know there's supposed to be a boundary. So they're running around like crazy kids sometimes because they're waiting for someone to tell them where the boundaries are. And then calm comes in. You know what to do to a brand new baby to calm them down? They swaddle them, right? Swaddling is taking them in that blanket and wrapping them really snug and tight. When I first did that with my firstborn, I thought, wow, they really want to do this tight. No, it makes the baby feel safe and happy. Baby gets upset once the arm pops out and is doing all of this and they can't control it. And they're like, I don't know, what is that mine? You know. And all of a sudden they see it like, whoa, you know. Mine was a Houdini. He could, no matter what I did, one arm popped out. And I don't know where it came from or how he got it out, but I would turn back around. He's like, ha, 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 ha. Hi, Dad. Got it out. And I was actually pretty good at the swaddling thing. I don't know how he did that, but anyway. But see, that makes this, knowing that you're wrapped and you're snug and you're tight and you're protected brings calm. Okay? Matter of fact, I saw commercials recently for these weighted blankets now. That people, it's supposed to help them sleep better because of the weight of it, encapsulates you a little bit more, makes you feel safe and enclosed. You know, think about how many of you had a parent, you don't have to raise your hand, that had a parent that tucked you in, right? And they made the blanket all snug all the way around your body and tucked you in all nice and tight. That's almost like the swaddling. There's almost a memory in there that says, I feel safe and I can sleep if I'm all tucked in nice and tight. I know some of you like to have it all nice and loose and everything else at this point, but I mean, that was for children. This is something that helps them feel safe. So it's those boundaries. So let's understand that those two things are right here in the beginning. He repeats something to establish it. That fits right into the 2 to 3 witnesses to establish, you know, in a case of a crime of somebody breaking a law, you need 2 or 3 witnesses. And so he gives them 2 different dreams to make the same point. Okay? And that's important there. All right, who's next? See, Steve, you didn't know you were going to trigger all that, did you? Listen, I only wrote 1 note. I had to get the most out of it. That's all I got on here. I got those 2 things. That's it. All right, go ahead.
1 is more than enough. Comment, 2 of them, I think, talking about great darkness and light. Would this be an example? I mean, he was in that prison for more than 2 years, and then he was set as second in command over Egypt. Would that not be an example of the greater the darkness, the greater the light to be revealed?
It would be that would definitely be an example. Like, I mean, it was hidden. It was a light to be revealed later. Okay? And actually, you know, when he was in the prison in the darkness, there was an absence of actively useful light. He wasn't really that useful to anybody. You know, he wasn't able to really do anything in the prison. And even at Potiphar's house, I mean, he did the most, but as he did what he could do, by the way, that's a lesson from the other portion, but when he did what he could do, it was recognized. And some of you whine and complain about the situation. Well, do the most you can do with it, and who knows what's going to happen next. Because Joseph, just no matter what he was put into, he did everything he could, put all his strength into it, and had the right attitude, and it all paid off. Great lesson to be learned. Okay, go ahead.
Second, it doesn't talk about him getting a whole lot of time to prepare mentally that he was about to go before Pharaoh. He just spent 2 years or more in a prison, and he came out sounding like a very professional, very put together. He didn't just sit in prison letting his mind rot. There was preparation there. He was sharp. He didn't just wallow in whatever, which we already know about him, but it just struck me anew how well he presented himself. He was ready, even though he didn't know what he was getting ready for.
Okay, so what do you think he had? Hold the mic. What do you think he had going on that made that happen?
Heart?
Well, he had heart, but he had emunah. He understood that everything that happens, Yahweh causes or allows, and he had to trust it. He didn't understand it necessarily. Didn't understand it until later. He actually says to his brothers, we haven't gotten there yet, but what you meant for harm, Yahweh used for good. Well, that's next week. Okay? But he didn't know. He knew, but he didn't know what exactly it would look like. He didn't expect to be second in command to Pharaoh, but he just knew something. He also was given dreams, right? So he didn't know what that was going to look like, but he remembered it when his brothers showed up. Okay? Sometimes, you're not going to know what something is until you get there. But you should always embrace the emunah part, which is you trust that wherever it is that you're going to get to, there was a purpose to it. Okay? Amen.
Okay, Janet's next, and we told her only one question.
That's okay. Well, she usually gets more than one online. It's okay. She could have two.
Okay, I have 3, Rabbi.
Although people keep thinking, although people keep thinking it's Olivier anyway, so. Because it usually goes Olivier and Janet Hoffman, so they'll think Olivier's asking the questions. I know better, though.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to be here with you tonight.
All right, so because you're here, I'll let you have 3. Now, when you move here, don't get used to that, though.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay, so chapter 41:8. Okay, so the Egyptians were believing on the interpretation of dreams, and they were using magic to reveal what was behind that. So, in our case, obviously, we're not Pharaoh or anything like that, but we all dream. Will it be appropriate to come to you if we have questions? If there's like a recurrent dream or do we do anything with it at all?
Look, you can. I've not really been given that particular gift where people share their dreams with me where I know exactly. Although I have to tell you that if you look at some of the dreams, you have situations where this isn't the only time we see something happening with dreams, where clearly it needed an interpretation from on high. This one, if you look at it, it depends on if you have a puzzle mind, an analytical mind. You can say, oh, okay, so this looks like abundance and scarcity. And you really could come up with something like this. Okay? And so that's why the magicians were able to do what they did, is that they would generally come up with something they thought was logical, and they would be right enough of the time that people thought that they could interpret, not that they were really magically interpreting. Okay? But in this case, they just couldn't figure it out, because it just didn't make any sense to them. They weren't able to see. And so, now, of course, the interpretation did come from Elohim, and he showed Joseph exactly what it was all about. But I'm just saying is that when you ask somebody to interpret, it's that gift from Elohim to see and understand the imagery of the dream, the symbolism of what it's trying to say. Okay, so if you want to bring stuff to me, you can. What I would say is this, though. Most people that you see having dreams, including Joseph, okay, when it was his dream, even though he's an interpreter of dreams, he had no idea what it was until it played out. So if you're given dreams, remember, the one that was given to Pharaoh was different. That one was for Joseph to do something, to get into a position. That was all about using the opportunity to elevate Joseph. And so that's why that dream was left to that way. Otherwise, it normally would have been left to play out, and then you go, oh, I get it now. All right? And so this is a way to protect Israel and to elevate Joseph. So when you have dreams, don't be so quick to think you know what they mean and that it's important that you know what they mean. You might not always, and a lot of the time, if not most of the time, it'll play out and you go, I see now. All right? Now, it doesn't mean you can't ask somebody to help you, but be careful. If you ask somebody to interpret, you are giving over to them a potentially dangerous level of authority and control that could speak into your life. The same thing with people that got all caught up in the charismatic movement and with all the tongue speaking and everything. The person that was doing the interpreting was given an awful lot of authority, because they could say it meant anything. Whether they made it up or they really believed it or not, doesn't matter. But you were stuck to listen. Okay, so you are giving over a lot of power and authority potentially. And I know a lot of people personally who have had their lives very much messed up in big ways because people, quote unquote, spoke into their lives. Now, bear in mind, someone can do that, but you don't have to receive what they say. Okay, my wife and I were in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1998 or 9, and I'm blanking on his name right now. Anyway, guest speaker had come in to speak, was riding in a van with us to the speaking engagement because we happened to be staying in the same location. Oh, Avi Ben Mordechai. And he looked me in the eye and he said, I'm going to prophesy you and your wife are going to move to Israel by the end of the year. I still haven't been there. That's 20 years ago. Okay? But that was his prophecy. I said, thanks, Avi. I don't think it'll probably happen, but okay. He's like, no, you guys are going to definitely be in the land. Because he had moved recently at that point to live in Israel. Okay, so I said, see, so be careful when people speak into your life, because you could have accepted saying, oh, that was of Yahweh, and he spoke it. Now we have to go move. And you start changing every part of your life to try to match up with something somebody said. Be careful with all that stuff. I was willing to let it be the one where if it played out, then I'd go, look, he was right. If it didn't play out, I made no effort to force it or to avoid it. I just took that information and said, okay, that's interesting. If that's where Yahweh wants me, I'm okay with that. Didn't happen. Okay? But I know other people had their lives very much messed up. Some of you had that experience yourselves where people came and spoke something into your life. You're going to do this, and you're going to do great things, or you're going to marry this person, or you're going to, and that stuff can just mess you up. Be careful. Okay.
Rabbi, chapter 41, 45. I mean, we know that Joseph was a righteous man. Elohim was with him. We read that even before in the previous Parsha. But he ended up marrying a woman that was given by Pharaoh, who was probably a woman out of his faith. So I guess I was wondering about that piece that then was...
Okay, so there's not a lot of detail here as far as, other than the fact that he was given her as wife. We can see some very powerful pictures here, but as far as why would this be allowed, why was this okay, and all those kind of things, there's a difference between, in these individual cases of things like this happening, than just saying where, Israel as a nation is going to go and take on the daughters of another nation, as you saw happening with Balaam right after Balaam, and then you had to see with Pinchas, our hero, stepping in, and there are things like that were happening, where they were in a big way, or even when they were over there with, with Dinah, and they were going to offer that, our sons will marry your daughters and vice versa. That was going to have a huge effect on the nation as a whole. But you can see some powerful things here, the imagery of, Israel eventually being a place that brings also the outsiders or the Gentiles in. But this is a woman who came in, as best we can tell, being submissive to her husband and following in his ways. Okay, that she was not coming in, as we see with Solomon and others, to pollute them to their ways. Okay? And so this was, again, we're not given any details other than this. But we can see that he allowed it, and it was honored, and it was, Look, it's just like we don't understand why it doesn't seem to be a problem for Judah to get in all kinds of trouble going to a prostitute that happened to be his daughter-in-law, and that whole situation play out. And yet she's actually held up as being the one who was right in the whole deal. Okay? So some things have to do with the time frame and the time period and how it's all playing out. There wasn't a codified thou shalt not and these things involved in that way. Okay?
The last question, Rob, if you allow me, please. 42, 24, and 30. It recounts a couple of times when Joseph wept. And in verse 30, he had difficulty controlling his emotions. And even from before 41, 51, when he had his first son, he named him after saying, Elohim made me forget my toil and my father's house. So I guess my question is, when he was weeping, Can we understand that as maybe that he was still having difficulty kind of processing and healing from what he experienced from his brothers? But eventually, obviously, he got to the forgiveness piece at the end when we're going to see it next week. That's my question to you, Rabbi. Thank you.
I think you answered your own question incorrectly. I mean, he was going through this very wide spectrum emotion. He was very much missing his brothers. But you know what? He missed them even when he was there with them when he was younger, because they really didn't treat him with the love of brothers, even when he was with them originally. But this is something he had always wanted, was his family to be together, and here they were, his brothers. And so, you have something where it's so close, but you can't touch it. It's like right there, but you can't get to it. That's kind of what it felt like to him in some ways. In other ways, he wanted to make them pay so bad, make them know how much pain they caused him, mostly from breaking his heart and rejecting him in the way they did. Not just because he was, slave and then arrested and all that, but just the idea that they would, just discard their brother and sell him off. I mean, that heartbreak. So which of those millions of emotions was he crying about? Probably all of them to some degree, because he was going through this really internal struggle, which is why he did these various strange things that almost were just delay tactics for him to figure out how to deal with them. Now, on the other hand, he was also trying to figure out where they were at, because he didn't know. It'd been a really long time. I mean, we're talking about years and years and years. And so now he's trying to understand, are they different? How is this? I know how it's affected me, he's thinking, but how did it affect them? I was a slave. I was arrested. I did all these things. What was their life like? What happened when they went home without me? And so as he comes to realize that they suffered, probably almost more than he did in some ways, with the guilt eating up at them and all the other stuff. And he can see that they truly were repentful and were, going to protect. Like, why would you protect Benjamin? You didn't protect me. Well, because we learned our lesson, that's why. And so I think he was crying because he was just overwhelmed with emotion. Okay, Rabbi Tom?
Thank you. You said if we get just 1 point from the Torah, Parsha.
Yep.
The 1 point I got was this. Yosef certainly had a lot of down points in his life. With a minor one with his father, then a big one with his brothers, and being sold as a slave, and Potiphar's wife, and then one of his fellow prisoners forgot all about him. But during all that time, there's not one word in Torah that showed that he ever despaired or he ever suffered depression. Never. And I think that that must have been evident in him physically, because in verse 38, Pharaoh said to his servants, could we find another man like him, a man in whom is the spirit of Elohim? So his countenance must have reflected his basic attitude, some physical countenance, I think.
Listen, he saw, remember, I'm sure he's seen many people taken out of a prison and the state of mind they were in, their attitude, and he saw somebody different. See, that's the main thing I was talking about when we were talking earlier during the announcements part, and the prayer time, is are people, what are they seeing this time of year in your attitude and your behavior? Are they seeing something different? Not different bad, but different good. This is also a time of year not only filled with the focus on, Christmas and all of that paganism, all that other stuff that we all like to focus on, but this is the number one time of year for people to be depressed. Highest levels of depression and suicides and all kinds of other bad, negative, emotionally, focused things. And so, here, when people see you, do they see you at peace? Do they see you with joy? Do they see that love, peace, all the right love, joy, peace, patience, etc., from the fruit of the Spirit? And they'll have to wonder, well, how come you don't seem to be all messed up? You say, well, first of all, I'm not shopping. Do you want to have some peace? Yeah. You couldn't pay me to get near a store right now, okay? And don't try to go right after this thing is over tomorrow because everybody returning everything, it'll be worse. Give it a couple of days, and then everything will get back to normal. Don't worry, there'll still be sales all the way to New Year's. Matter of fact, some of them will be better than the ones before you got to this craziness. But, there's a different peace. There's no stress. You're not thinking, what am I doing to my budget? What am I doing to my finances? I got to buy all these people presents. I don't even like them, but I got to buy one because they're going to buy me one. Nothing like obligated giving. Yeah, bah humbug on that, right? Okay. But, Joseph had, he also, some of you may have had this experience, but you don't see him ever seem, at least, to be upset that he lost that chunk of his life. Because he recognized that it all prepared him for something. I mean, he could have thought, the best years of my life were taken away. I was a young man coming into the prime of life, and the next, however, I don't know how many years it was. People know that 20-something years, whatever it was, 20 years. That's imagine those years from like 20 to 40, or whatever it was. I mean, what was the age? 17? Okay, so 17 to 37. I mean, that's some prime time of life right there. But you know what? I'll make an analogy, just hit me. How many of you recognize when you got to 37 that you hadn't prepared right because of the things you did from 17 to 37? See, Joseph was prepared, running Potiphar's house, dealing with the adversity of being arrested, etc. I mean, he was prepared to be someone to rule over. He had already been humbled, okay? He had learned skills of management, had a reputation for that even though he had been a slave. And so a lot of us get to 37 having lived life a little too abundantly, and not prepared for life at 37, 40, whatever. Make note of that, children, because some of you are 17 or approaching it or just a little over. And you know what you do for the next 20 years, it will make a huge difference in where you end up by the time in the next 20 years after that. Because showing up at 37, not a whole lot better off than you were at 17, it messes a lot of people up. And most people, not most, but enough of people end up there. Okay, so that's a good lesson there. Thank you, Rabbi Tom. Okay, Shira?
Yeah, this is great because I think about how merciful Father was in giving him that dream, those two dreams, when he was just, 17 or so. And I think in the Psalm somewhere it says that the word of Yahweh tried him while he was in prison. And so he had to choose to believe what Yahweh had shown him in that dream, that this was not going to be the end of his life, that he had a sense that somehow, some way, Father was going to keep his word. And I just think that is so awesome because when Father does choose an anointed, appointed, he does things to prepare you for what you're going to have to go through to carry that on. And
Amen.
Yeah, that was good.
Let me interrupt and just say that goes, even without a dream, the fact that he called you and opened your eyes and opened your ears, it's the same as like Joseph with the dream. You may not know how it's going to play out, but if you are patient and stick to it, you're going to end up where the dream or the vision or his calling has told you would end up. But you have to do the stuff that you have to do. Joseph did everything he could within the framework of where he was at that moment, knowing that dream somehow was going to be fulfilled in some way. Well, guess what? It's the same idea as when he called you. He called you. He didn't show you how it's all going to look and how it's all going to play out. You just have to do what you're supposed to do and you'll get there. But you got to do what you're supposed to do. With the right attitude would really help. Because remember, it's about transforming into Yeshua, and that includes the attitude.
Amen. Genesis 41:55, this really stood out to me. Because the Mitzrites are all hungry and they're, what are we going to do? And they go to Pharaoh. And he says, go to Yosef, do whatever he says to you. And that rang a bell in my mind. from John 2, the wedding at Cana. They ran out of wine, and they went to Mary, and Mary went to her son Yeshua, and she goes around and tells the servants, do whatever he says to you, word for word, the same thing. The anointed, appointed, the Mashiach, being the antitype, the fulfillment of Yosef. And I was just thinking about this when we're keeping faith with Yahweh. You know, that's the command for us. Do whatever he tells you to do. And it could be as simple as being in your prayer closet and getting a conviction about something and you know what you need to do. Or it could be complicated and you have to go to your teacher and ask, what do I do? But it's that whole attitude of, okay, I'm going to obey and do whatever he tells me to do. And I just that just really stood out to me, the word for word, the connection.
It's the same wording in Deuteronomy 17. Okay, when something comes up, you don't know what to do, and you go to the leadership. And in verse 11 it says, do according to the Torah which they teach you to do, according to the right ruling which they say, and don't turn to the left or the right. You do what they say, which was declared to you. And that matches up exactly with what happened here with Pharaoh. He said, you know, you don't know what to do. You're hungry. Go to the appointed. I appointed him as second in command, and do what he tells you to do. See, that's why it's your job to figure out who's appointed. And then go and ask for help. But if you do, you got to do what they tell you to do. That's really the main thing. So, and that connects up very well in those three places, and I'm sure in others as well. Okay, Tamara?
Okay, I have one comment and a question. In Genesis 42, the 17, and he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Now, we all know that they put him in the well, and he was kind of a captive and a prisoner. So it's just kind of ironic to me that he was kind of able to, you know, almost return the favor and say, well, they were able to experience some of what he felt when they made him a captive too in that well. That was my statement. The next is a question just after that. It says, now Joseph said to them on the 3rd day, do this and live, for I fear Elohim. What was this statement, for I fear Elohim? What was driving that? Is it because this was something that he felt led by Elohim to do?
Which verse is this?
It's 42:18. It's at the very end. For I fear Elohim.
Well, look, you know, if he's saying I fear Elohim, that could have meant anything to them because that just meant, like us in today saying I fear God. So it didn't necessarily mean that it was the Elohim that they knew, because they were still picturing him as the Egyptian head guy.
Okay. I was just...
So it wasn't clear at this point to them, I don't think. You know, and it's just the same thing when Pharaoh says, you know, a man in whom Elohim dwells. I mean, they're seeing someone that is anointed, is what he's saying. That's maybe think of it as an idiomatic phrase when Pharaoh goes, I can see there's a special anointing from above on this man. Whether it was from above the way he saw it, he wasn't necessarily believing it was Yahweh that did it, but he was just, you know, he was noticing that there was a special gifting that came from, as he would have thought of the gods or from God or however they understood Elohim to be. Remember, Elohim is the catchword for all things worshipped. That's why Yahweh refers to himself as Yahweh, your Elohim. Okay, as opposed to, or sometimes Yahweh, the Elohim, above all. Elohim was just a catch-all phrase for, as we would say today, God. Whatever, everybody worships some sort of God, except the atheists, but the ones who believe in some sort of deity, we use the word God to represent all of them. Okay? So did they. Or I should say they didn't, so do we, because they did it first. Okay, who's next? Yeah, we're getting right to 10 o'clock. Bring it back to those guys back there. Wait, Serenity has a question first, and then give it back.
So I have a question for chapter 41, verse 16, when it says, "And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me, let Elohim answer Pharaoh with peace." Is it saying that, is Joseph trying to say that, Elohim is speaking through him, for him?
Well, you've basically got the right idea. What he's saying is, I'm not empowered with some special power. I just speak what Elohim tells me to speak. He's got the ability to understand the dreams. Because remember, he had magicians and other people, Pharaoh did, that thought of themselves as powerful, and they had all these talents and gifts, and they could do this magical stuff. And he's like, no, anything I can do is I just interpret what he tells me to say. So he was just redirecting everything towards Elohim. So you had it correct. All right, now give the mic to her father.
All right, from Angelica Gotti, Genesis 41:14. So Joseph shaved in preparation to meet the Pharaoh. She's thinking, I thought men were supposed to keep the beards.
No, look, there's no verse that tells you that. I used to get into big fights about that because I didn't used to always keep my beard. And people would go to Leviticus and go, blah, 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 about the beard thing. And I almost always had to say, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Your lack of seat is deafening. Because I don't think I ever had anybody correct me about the beard who was wearing any. But look, there's verses that tell you what to do or not do to your beard if you have one. If you look at the Nazirite vow, at the end of the Nazirite vow, you shave everything. I mean, you're shaving your head, your beard, the whole everything. So, there's nothing about the beard that's required. As a matter of fact, Yahweh would never require something that not everybody can do. There are a lot of people, especially depending on, certain races don't grow beards very well. I'm not trying to be racial. I'm just saying, but there are, certain races that don't actually grow very well a beard. There are also people of all races that don't grow well a beard. But I'm saying, the Asians don't really grow. Their cheeks don't grow the beards. They struggle with that. I have a lot of friends that way. Look, and there are a lot of people, white, black, yellow, doesn't matter, who really can't grow a beard. So would Yahweh make an instruction just to frustrate and embarrass somebody because they can't do it? Not that they won't do it, but that they can't do it. So all of you with beards, I think that's awesome. That's great. Only because I think it's great to know that you know the same feeling I know not having to shave. That's the pleasure of having the beard, is that you don't have to shave all the time. But the thing is, I have total empathy and sympathy for those of you that can't. I remember it was like when I was a lot younger, nothing really grew on the side. So it took until I was a lot older when the beard would start to grow in. But there's nothing in Scripture requiring you to have a beard. Okay? So, and by the way, this is simply saying, not metaphorically, idiomatically, he cleaned himself up before he presented himself to Pharaoh. Okay? That's what they said. Look, they cleaned him up, and they made him presentable. They put on clean clothes. I'm sure they bathed him, and they washed him. They made him presentable before they brought him to... Man, he's been in a prison. I'm sure he looked really scruffy and smelly and everything else, right? Because he's just been sitting in the prison. So now they cleaned him up to make him presentable to Pharaoh. That's all they're really talking about. All right? So if you can't grow a beard, that's fine. Okay? I have mine for two reasons. One is I like the beard just personally. The other is I hate shaving. Okay? I do. But otherwise, I used to shave it at Passover so I wouldn't be so hot during the summer, and let it grow at Sukkot, and I'd just have a winter beard. But then I had people get online, like some of you right now, who are thinking this, who saw one of my teachings a while back when I had no beard saying, well, I was thinking that you knew what you were talking about and were a pretty good teacher until I saw you stand before your brothers naked. I'm pretty sure I've always worn clothing when I came to services. So he must have been, what was he talking about? Oh, yeah, the beard. I'm sorry, but that's not naked before your brothers. Okay? That's true. Besides, listen, you can still use the coin on a bare face. It's fine too. But just to understand that there's not a scripture anywhere that says, thou shalt have a beard. Now, it tells you things not to do to your beard. You're not to trim it to make like the pagan priests of Egypt, that if you noticed in all the movies you see this, they have it into this long, tight, trimmed corners so that this long thing coming off the chin. That's what we're not supposed to do. So we don't look like the priests of paganism. You don't see anybody doing that generally anymore anyway. But I'm saying, but you've seen that in all of the movies of ancient Egypt, and you see that in a lot of the stuff that was chiseled into the stones and stuff, these pictures of these beards that came, 5-6 inches away from their face, tightly wound together and trimmed, and not to look like the priests of the other religions. So this thing's not to do to your beard, but there's no requirement to have one. But besides, if you don't have one, you can't do the things that by accident that you're not supposed to do. If you don't have a beard, there's nothing you can do to mess it up. So that makes things even more simple that way. Okay? Well, I will say to all you guys who have the beards, and some of you don't want to what do you think, you're Samson? You don't want to bring a knife to your beard ever? Okay, groom it up a little bit. Some of you look like, ladies are all applauding. All right, next question. Let's see what more trouble I can get into it's after 10 o'clock. You guys are all in trouble now. I'm just waking up and hitting my stride. Now you're all in trouble. Go ahead.
Yeah, seeing a case that says, well, without a beard, there's nothing to scratch. So keep your beard, Rabbi. Philip Mason, 4132, comment, the dream was repeated because the word is established by Elohim. I found this interesting considering how often Abba repeats himself throughout the Torah.
Amen. Amen. Let me ponder that last question. Okay. For those of you who have no idea online what that's all about, go watch the little thing we did called The Legend of the Coin. Okay, so it should not surprise you that when something's important, Yahweh repeats it over and over again. It shouldn't surprise you for many reasons. Not only is it important because he says that saying something at least 2 or 3 times establishes something, but you have to remember they didn't have one of these. They didn't have everything, all 66 books or however many they had, prior to the New Testament books. They didn't have them all nice and neatly in one bound edition. Everything was on an individual scroll. The first time they had a compilation of things is when they had the first 5 books put together on a Torah scroll. So you had 5 on one giant scroll. But other than that, each prophet, each of the writings was on a separate scroll. So if you read something in one place, because that's all you had access to establish it, it was helpful to be able to read it on another scroll by another writer to help establish things. So it should be very comforting to know that that is a consistent part of this puzzle. Okay, next.
All right, question from Philip Mason, 4152. Any coincidence that during the splitting of the kingdom, Ephraim gets dispersed? 4152.
The name of the second he called Ephraim, for Elohim has caused me to bear fruit in the land of my affliction. When he splits the kingdoms up, I mean, we end up understanding that, Manasseh is firstborn, but Ephraim gets the blessing, and we don't see that yet, but we'll see it. And, Judah is the one that's then prophesied to bear the authority as well as the teaching and be the visible one there. So Ephraim is going to be the one scattered. Now it says about bearing fruit in the land of my affliction. This doesn't necessarily point to the scattering. Certainly you could stretch things as far as you want to stretch things. So I'm not sure but that Ephraim was going to be fruitful. Judah was fruitful. There was more. Listen, Judah was the biggest tribe. So, so you have that in terms of, as far as fruitfulness, Judah was the biggest. Okay, go ahead.
From Norma Silva, it says, what would be the meaning for us that Yahweh gave those dreams to Pharaoh, who was someone that most likely practiced idolatry, but was used anyway for the benefit of his people?
Okay, see, we sometimes have a problem. I'm going to help fix the problem right now, okay? we seem to not be able to connect with the reality of what it means to have a king. See, we look at prophets. Who were prophets sent to? Kings. Okay, because kings were rulers over lots and lots of people. So if this kingdom was a place that people would generally come to for food and stuff, which is likely where Jacob would have gone, just like his father did and his grandfather did when there was scarcity, he was used then to be the ones to have not only elevate Joseph out, but also to save Israel, meaning the 12, Jacob and his sons. All right? And so again, these things are given to leaders. Remember, I've said this often, vision is given to the leader. Doesn't matter who the leader is, vision is given to the leader. Okay, we see that with Cyrus, okay, being used as a Mashiach, okay, out of Babylon to let them come back and to rebuild the temple. And so we have to remember that it's because of, they don't look at the pagan part of it. Look at the role they were playing related to Israel. Yahweh intervened and worked with the leadership of the time that was necessary in its relating to Israel. And so Pharaoh was given the dream. So don't lock onto, but he was pagan. No, he was king. Focus on that. Okay, he did a lot of things with Pharaoh. In Egypt, with Moses, we'll see the same thing, dealing with Pharaoh and being king. By the way, he also gave a dream to Abimelech, didn't he? Okay? He also plagued Pilate with some dreams. All right, the leadership is sometimes the one that is given these things because it is how Elohim communicates to the leadership to eventually have things play out the way they're supposed to play out. Does that work for everybody? Do we understand? But we're not used to thinking of kings. Why? Because we're so busy thinking of king me, self-king. Okay, because especially here in America, there's no sovereignty except self-sovereignty. Only this country could have birthed the me generation years ago. I don't think we ever came out of it. Okay? But there was a generation known as the me generation. Only America could have birthed that thing. We don't understand being under authority. That's something that's so foreign to us at this point, even though we are only 200 plus years from being under it. But we just can't relate. And so don't be all messed up that Yahweh spoke to Pharaoh. He spoke to the leader at the time that could have the most effect on the chosen, anointed Jacob and his children. Okay, next.
From Evangeline Agalasso, it says 42:24. Was there a known reason why Joseph chose Shimon rather than any of his other brothers?
We'd be guessing. I mean, we'd really be stretching it. I mean, clearly Shimon was, guilty of much as part of his being thrown in the pit and sold to the slaves and everything else. So Shimon was, he earned his spot quite a bit. Anyway, it was Joseph's thing. Look, he knew who was involved, and he knew who he wanted to pick, and he knew who he wanted to send home. And we're only told what we're told, what little we know. Next question. Because it's after 10, so let's speed this up. Says the man who's talking too much.
Okay, comment from Arthur and Linda. This is chapter 42. Brothers tried to convince Joseph on how trustworthy they are. Beware of people who try to convince you of their trustworthiness. Trustworthy people are just that. No need to explain. From Pamela Shufford, Genesis 43:32. The Egyptians don't eat with Hebrews. They separated the brothers from Joseph, and Joseph's servers ate by themselves. Shouldn't the brothers have wondered why they did that?
No. I'm not sure why they should have wondered. I mean, this is the normal configuration and tradition. So they would have expected that. Now, what they were obviously messed up with is that they were seated on purpose, like with place cards, but they were seated in their birth order. I mean, what were the odds of that, randomly, you know? Because I'm sure at this point, they're all adults, and they all could have been, you couldn't look at them necessarily by age, looking in their faces and their heights or whatever, because of enough different similarities in ages, and some of them were born pretty close together. Remember, they didn't have the same moms necessarily, so some of them could have been born fairly close together, but he knew the birth order, you know? That's what they were paying attention to. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the last one from I guess Brother Weaver. So it's question 44, verse 5. Joseph practiced divination. It says the Talmud mentions magic. The Torah forbids divination. Could you please clarify this verse's understanding?
Okay, got to remember at this point they're still playing out that the brothers would have been familiar with the structure of society in Egypt. They saw Joseph as an Egyptian second in command. And so they would have understood the significance of the divining cup. Not that he actually was doing any divining with it. Okay? But they would have understood, oh, we're in big trouble. They're accusing us of taking the divining cup. See, we don't understand divining cup. They would have known immediately, oh, we're in big trouble. That's why they said, oh, no, none of us has that. If we have that, then fine, take us, do what you want, because we're not that stupid to take something that we know because that's something that Joseph expected, and the brothers were expected to know exactly what he was talking about, what a divining cup looked like and what it was. So that would have been something that would have been easily understood by them. So let's not get hooked up on the idea that he does divine with it. Remember, these are the ones who are talking to the brothers as if they're speaking on behalf of an Egyptian overlord. Okay? And by the way, we do have divining going on as far as things being done with the Urim and the Thummim and the certain things that Yahweh tells us and how to do it. We just are told that none of us, except only the high priest, and that was it, we're doing these kind of things under certain circumstances in a certain way, and nowhere are we using a cup to do it. Okay? But you only see the high priest doing it. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it for any related questions for tonight's readings.
Okay, just a clarification on verse 32 when it talked about the arrangement of how they were sitting, which was the second to last question. You know, this is emphasized just so that you would know that he didn't just go down and sit with his brothers. That you would know that the charade was still being played out, or Egyptian overlord with Israelite or Canaanite, as I would have looked at him, you know, sitting there and eating, how they separated and whatever they did. This was continuing to play out the expectation of protocol. That's the only reason it's there, so that you know that the protocol was being executed according to standard. All right. Who wants to close us in prayer? Oh, Steve's volunteering people today. He volunteered Charles, and now he's volunteering Olivier. And I'm gonna volunteer Steve to stop usurping authority and volunteering people. Okay, Olivier, go ahead.
Abba, Father, thank you so much for this time that we're spending studying your word, on getting insight on what we need to do to become more like your son, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And I think Steve he just likes your accent. I think that's why he has you do that. As do we all.
I didn't know if that's what I was doing, so I won't do that again. I was just trying to...
You were just trying to include him. I understand. Okay. Well, that's my job. Let me pick the people. Okay. Next. Well, because you don't want to put somebody on the spot, and I've already spoken to people I know who's ready to be put on the spot and that kind of thing. So I just want to make sure that we're not, overly pressuring anybody and putting them on the spot. All right. If anybody wants to come up and wave goodbye to everybody out there, come on up here. Yes, you did. Okay. Now let's get everybody up here. When you get up, just those of you that are on the outsides, you watch this. You're going to bang into the stands here. Okay, just watch for Michael to let you know if you're on camera or not, those that are on the outside edges here. Just watch. Don't trip over the mic stand. Okay.
Short ones in the front, tall ones in the back.
All right, if you're on the outside edge, Michael's pointing to you to move over. Stephen, move over. Okay, Ben, Stephen, move in. Okay, Waffle's coming around the back. Okay, shh. All right, Michael, we good? He's working it out. Okay, while he's working it out, okay, so tonight we have 3 things to say. We're going to say Laila Tov, which is good night. Shavua Tov, have a good week. And then we're going to wish them all a happy Hanukkah. And then we'll tell them we love them. So that's 4 things, really, okay? Laila Tov, Shavua Tov, happy Hanukkah, and then we'll tell them we love them. Okay, here we go. We're good? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Laila Tov, Shavua Tov, happy Hanukkah. We love you.
Happy Hanukkah, bro.
Happy Hanukkah.